All right. This is what the third video, I think. Okay, AS Psychology 9990. Just a few concepts or ideas, issues, debates that you will encounter. First would be nature versus nurture. Next would be the ethical considerations in a psychological study. This will be part of an evaluation of the study. Next would be the choice of psychological research methods. You will look at the question or the area or the topic, and then you will assess whether that was the best approach to the study, if that was a good choice of a research methodology, design, or statistical method. And then one thing that you should remember, or an idea or a statement about psychology, is that there's no one definitive view in psychology. So there's no one perspective or approach that can explain a phenomenon. And we'll know more about this. We'll take it slowly. Okay, we watched this video in class. If you have not, just watch the trailer for, let me type it, three identical strangers, right? Three identical strangers. An interesting actual study. It's one of those what we call twin studies in psych, or in just clinical studies in general, or research. And these, because they are identical, I believe they're called monozygotic uh, triplets. And you'll find out the research question of the doctor, the psychologist, in the actual documentary. I don't know where you can get the full one. I was able to find mine. Actually, I don't remember anymore. I'll try. If you want a copy, you can send me a message, and then I'll try and find it. It's a bit long, very informative, it's very human. Sad moments, happy moments, you can find everything here. But it'll tell you about the insights in psychology and the dilemma, the research dilemma, which is, what if an ethical research can produce very useful information or findings? When is it okay to do it, right? We have developed standards in evaluating ethical uh, grounds, I guess. And we follow the IRB, the International Review Board, laying down the rules on what we can do with animals and humans in studies in general, not just experiments, but studies in general. Anyway, going back to the nature versus nurture. Okay, so if you were raised by three different parents but you have the same genetic makeup, will you grow up with different personality? Same? Will you have the same type or different? Will you like the same food or not? Remember, you have the same genetic makeup. You just were raised by different people, and you have different environments and other factors like socioeconomic status, meaning probably your parents have less money than your twin, etc., and so on. Next question is it ethical to do that study? The one that was shown in this Three Identical Strangers documentary. When is a research ethical? What animal can we do experiments on? On stress, on depression, on what animals can we shock with electricity? Can we do that with people? No. The answer is no. For animals, it depends on the animal. And it depends if there's a lot of insight that could be found after you have done the study. Um, but we'll talk about it um, case by case, right? Because psychology AS is has a case study approach. All right. Next two questions would be choice of psychological research methods, and oh yeah, we just talked about those. Um, And in class earlier, we talked about the history of certain concepts or clinical terms. In psychiatry, in psychology, we use the term idiot, imbecile, moron, two way to describe people with some form of delay or low intelligence. And then we started using retardation, mental retardation or retarded. To retard literally means to slow down, right? So a person who's slow is retarded, but this is also considered a pejorative. When we say pejorative, it's an insult. So we don't use that anymore. The correct clinical term nowadays is intellectual disability. But even then, people are actually already using this as an insult. So if someone in social media says, haha, are you ID? Do you have intellectual disability? That's an insult, which something that shouldn't be happening, but people are people. Um, yeah, so I guess we just come up with another term if this becomes too much, right? Okay, so just going back to choice of psychological research methods, sometimes you have to ask, do we really have to do an experiment? Is it, or do we can just do a survey and just do a statistical analysis on the results of the survey? So you have to think about carefully the best research methodology based on the research question. First, you read the question and then try to imagine how you can answer this question. Is it an experiment? Is it a case study wherein you talk to a few people or maybe just even one or two persons about that question and then you have in depth interviews? Do you do self report surveys? You just administer a survey with a lot of questions to 300 people, and 300 people is good because you can get a good average and less error. But it's not an interview. You weren't able to observe the behavior, they will just write their answers and hopefully they will be honest. And many more. There are many research methodology, and sometimes it's a combination of both, like experiment with a survey or a case study with certain writing tasks, right? So it can be combined, all right? And remember that in AS psychology, we have four main approaches, or we can say perspectives, in trying to explain human behavior and uh, just the general topic of social science. We can approach it in four different perspectives. First is biological. We look at the factors that um, um, affect that behavior that can be traced to the brain and the chemicals in the brain. All right. Our anatomy. Okay, the impact of drugs, genes, etc. All right. So very biological factors that affect behavior and mental processes. I think we can go to the next slide. We can talk about this another time because this is quite technical. All right. Next one is a cognitive approach. So for this one, it's uh, perception of color. And what is perception, even, right? Um, Language or word recognition. Okay. Um, Memory. And do you know the concept with computers, RAM? If you want to have a computer that can handle Chrome and a game and Spotify and all the applications are open, you need a high RAM. Do human brains have RAM or an equivalent of RAM? The answer is, in a way, yes. We have working memory and short term memory, and together they allow us to think about things at the same time or process a question. Um, we'll talk about this in another time, but this is the Stroop experiment, and we did this in class, and I think you had a good time. But the point is, for cognitive approach, we look at factors that are not directly observable: perception, language or word recognition, memory, intelligence, working memory, and so on. Learning. So for learning is the change in behavior, right? Whenever we learn, something happens in our brain, sure, right? We think about something, but the point of learning is the change of behavior. What changes our behavior, or what prevents our behavior from changing? Is it observing others? Is it negative experience or good experience? Is it trauma? Is it associating one action with another result? Is it upbringing, and so on and so forth? So a learning approach is very important because the theories in the learning approach explain change in behavior, basically. And the last one is social. The presence of other people in a given situation, does it affect our behavior? If we are with our friends, are our behaviors different from when we are with our family? When teacher is around, do we behave differently? While in the temple, is our behavior different from when we are outside with our friends? What are the factors that relate to other people that affect our behavior, and why does it happen? Peer pressure, conformity, shame, ringjai, right? We'll figure it out when we do social approach. And I'll end the video here so it's short.